Hello guys, welcome to Dark Horse FM, and in today's video we're going to be looking at the overpowered formations in Football Manager 2022. We've seen a lot of tactics with unique formations in this year's iteration of Football Manager, but in this video I'm going to share with you what I've noticed based on the OP tactics that actually come out successful in the game, the ideal formations that you could try and walk around or build your team around that can help you get better results in the game. It also applies to the tactics that kind of favors you offensively, and also it's difficult for the AI to try and defend against those particular tactics or those particular formations. If this is your first time coming across the channel, remember to hit the subscribe button so you can get notified when new videos come up. So I'm going to split the video into two parts. In the first part of the video, I'm going to share with you the formations that I've used in Football Manager 2022 that actually helped me get good results. And in the second part of the video, I'm going to share with you formations that OP tactic creators tend to use, and I've noticed that those tactics are kind of overpowered and kind of exploit the match engine in a certain way. The first formation we're going to look at is the 5-2-3 or the 3-2-2-3 formation. In attack, it still makes use of those wide players and a central attacker, much like the 4-3-3 tends to use these three players here. And more often than not, the wide attackers tend to go inside and then allow or create room for the overlapping wing backs to actually get ahead of them. I'm more interested in the defensive shape of this tactic. It's solid at the back with three central defenders, and you can adjust the roles to kind of suit your style of play. And the width in this system, like I mentioned before, it kind of comes from the wing back. So the wide players, or the players in the wide attack, tend to come inside, and then the wing backs are going to be on the ones, or they're going to be the players in the team offering the width and going on the overlap, and then spraying those crosses or creating chances by crossing the ball into the box. Alternatively, with this shape, you can use inverted wing backs. That's kind of popular in this year's game as well. So that will help the central midfielders, because there's just the two central midfielders in this shape. So if you have inverted wing backs, they can actually help out the central midfielders and then offer some creative outlet and also some defensive responsibility in there, and then help out your defensive midfielders if you have your wide players as inverted wing backs. But in that case, your players, the wide attackers ahead of them, I don't think it's really, unless it's your plan to actually congest the entire midfield, it's kind of unwise to have these players inside forward or inverted wingers, and then you have inverted wing backs as well. So everybody's just going to be in the middle of the field, and unless that's your plan, I don't really see it as a very balanced approach to go. The next formation we're going to look at is the 4-2-3-1 de facto number 10 formation. I have to admit, in this year's version of Football Manager, I've rarely used this tactic as much as I would want to, primarily because the need hasn't really presented itself yet. It's still one of the best formations in modern football. Most of the elite sides tend to use this formation, and it allows you to actually control the game, have a lot of possession, try and dominate the opposition in the final third. It's also a very good counter-attacking system. The 4-2-3-1 works quite well in the lower league, so you can have your players sit back and then have have your players sit back. Your two central midfielders are going to be slightly more defensive, and then you can use your wingers to be the ones that are going to be explosive in attack when you're trying to launch those counter attacks. So the 4-2-3-1 is one of the good tactics in Football Manager 2022 as well. Another tactic I've had decent success with is the 4-4-2, and indeed in Football Manager 2022, this is the first game that I've really used the 4-4-2, flat 4-4-2 to like maximum potential. I have to admit, I've used this tactic a lot. In previous Football Manager games, I didn't really use this tactic. I didn't figure out a way to try and get this tactic to work. But in the current version of Football Manager FM22 that we have now, I have actually found a way to make use of the 4-4-2 and actually enjoy playing with the 4-4-2. I use this formation with Real Madrid. What it offers you is a flat midfield 4, a flat back 4 as well, and then two strikers. So technically you're actually overpowering, or it offers you some level of numerical superiority in every area of the field. So in attack, you do have two central strikers against their two central defenders, and then in midfield you're going to have 4. Most teams might have just the two central midfielders like we saw in the previous tactic, and you would have then 4 central or 4 midfielders, including your two wide players that can actually outnumber the opposition in midfield. And then in defense as well, even though the opposition plays with 3 strikers or with the 1 single striker or with 2 strikers, you still have the numbers in there to try and stop their attacks. Another tactic I've enjoyed using in FM 2022 is the 4-1-1-3-1 tactic. It's the asymmetrical 4-4-2, the asymmetrical 4-2-3-1 kind of. I came across this tactic in FM17 when I was managing at Leipzig, It was an interesting tactic, and then in previous or in other Football Manager games, I struggled to get it to work. But in FM22, it's kind of made a return for me, so I did enjoy using this tactic, having that one player here as a sitting midfielder, the defensive midfielder, however you call it, and then you can have a box-to-box midfielder here. That's like my favorite role for this central midfielder's position here, the box-to-box midfielder. That way he can support the attack and also help defensively. And then the wide players, usually I kind of stuck to using wide players, that's either the complete wing back or the wing back itself on support duty. Sometimes I use the fullback on attack duty as well, so that kind of helps when I'm using my wide players. But when I was using those wide players, it was tricky to not use an inverted wing back in this position because I know my DM was kind of isolated. So it would have been nice to use an inverted wing back, but I realized I didn't really use the inverted wing back. I kind of just stuck to using the wide players, the wing back on support, the fullback on attack, and the complete wing back on support duty. This tactic does allow you to use a ghost striker. That's what I like to call the ghost strikers, are those strikers that aren't really in the box at all. So the advanced forward is going to be in the box more often than not. He's going to lead the line, but in this situation I can use a false 9 in this attacking position here. That way he's really in the box more often than not. You can also use a deep line forward on support. I've kind of enjoyed using this role in FM 2022 as well. And then you can also use a complete wing back on the complete forward on support duty, even though I've rarely used him in this version of Football Manager. You can use the central striker that doesn't really spend much time in the box, and then you have an attacking midfielder here, like the attacking midfielder on attack duty, or one of the favorite roles in FM 2022, the shadow striker, which is the main issue of why we call it the ghost striker, because this guy is going to just hide in behind the main striker and then get into the box and score goals, create chances, and disrupt the opposition's defense. And you could have guessed it, my main tactic, I would want to say my number one go-to tactic in FM 2022 is the 4-3-3 DM wide. It used to be called the 4-1-4-1, but this is what we call it now, the 4-3-3 DM wide. This tactic actually gives you, I don't want to say numerical superiority because it's not really the case. It just kind of helps you dominate the middle of the field, because more often than not you hear that the football game is won in midfield. If you can actually control the middle of the field, you have your opposition on toast. So having 3 players in there, 3 solid, powerful players in your defensive midfield, and then with 2 wide players sometimes cutting inside as well, it helps you dominate games. For some reason, the 4-3-3 DM wide, I don't want to say it's overpowered this year. What I'm going to say is it's quite balanced. It offers you some defensive security as well as attacking prowess. Having the defensive midfielder in here offers some defensive security. That's what I'm going to call it, defensive midfielder here. I'm probably playing on defensive. You could also use a halfback, but having a solid player in your DM can allow your wing backs to actually get high up the pitch and then offer some creativity when they go up, and then they won't be worried about being caught out of possession. So that's it for part A. Let's get into part B now. Most of the shapes that have been really overpowered in this year's version of Football Manager, this is one that you're actually seeing right now, the 4-5-1 DM 2 AM wide. That's what it's going to call it. It probably has many names, but this is the one shape that you can say you're going to see in most OP tactics. The idea behind this shape is to have just as many players in your attack as possible and just as many players in your defense as possible. More often than not, in some OP tactics, you will see shadow strikers used in this role, in this manner. 2 shadow strikers, 1 advanced forward. That way you're actually overpowering the opposition's defense with so many attacking players. And what I've noticed in other OP tactics is that you're going to have 2 inverted wing backs on attack duty in this case, and then a roaming playmaker in the DM position. So that way these guys are actually in this region here. If I can just move them out, one of them in this region here and the other in this region here. But oh sorry, since they are on attack duty, they're actually going to be all the way high up here. So this is what you're going to have when your team is in possession of the ball. Your team is actually going to have a lot of defensive security behind the attackers, and then the inverted wing backs, sorry, they're going to be here sitting, protecting. They're trying to protect the attack or protect your attack so that your opposition doesn't hit you on the counter attack. That's kind of what you're going to see in most OP tactics. So this is one shape that really stands out in Football Manager 2022 this year. If you're curious about it, you can actually try it for yourself and see how it works. Another formation that has made a huge return this year is the 4-4-2 diamond. What happens is the idea that you have 2 attackers, 2 forward players or 2 strikers actually disrupts the opposition's defense. I've noticed that in Football Manager 2022, the AI doesn't like to see 2 strikers. If you make it 3, they're going to actually flip. They would just fall away and be disrupted completely. So having 1 striker, it would still get you goals, would still win you trophies, but having 2 and ensures that you're going to get a lot more goals. You will be vulnerable defensively, and that's a fact. That's something I've noticed in this game while using 2 strikers. But your chances of scoring more goals would be increased when you're using 2 strikers. This is another OP tactic shape or OP formation shape that you can do. It's the 4-3-3 narrow. Just like I mentioned with the 4-4-2, this is you using 3 strikers to actually overpower the opposition's defense. If they're using a flat back 3, or if they're using a back 3 or a flat back 4, they're still going to have trouble defending because they have to deal with 3 strikers. And then if your team is slightly better than them, it means that your fullbacks are going to be the ones offering the width in this case, and then they will just make it like 5 players that the opposition has to deal with when they're trying to defend. If you're doing it well with having a positive or attacking mentality up, it means that you're going to be pressing the opposition more often than not, and they're going to have trouble getting out of their own defense. Another OP tactic that I've seen, or OP formation that I've seen in Football Manager 2022, deploys 3 attacking midfielders in the number 10 role, or what you normally call the 3 10s, the 3 number 10 players. So what will happen in this case is that you could probably have a shadow striker in here, and another shadow striker in here, and then probably this guy as an attacking midfielder on attack, or another shadow striker. The idea is to have a main striker and then have 3 strikers that the opposition's defenders cannot mark, because they can't be drawn out of position to try and mark your attacking midfielder. So what's going to happen is that they won't actually figure out whether they're supposed to mark the shadow striker or the main striker. So having this one player here as the main striker with 3 shadow strikers behind him, sometimes you can actually use a trequartista in this role here, and then have the 3 shadow strikers behind him, since this guy is going to be moving a lot, creating room for these 2 or 3 the 3 shadow strikers to actually get into the box and cause a lot of havoc. So guys, that's as many as I can remember and as many as I can share today. Sure to stay tuned to Dark Horse FM to actually get notified when new Football Manager tactic hints and tips do come out. I'll catch you guys much later with more Football Manager tips in the next video. If you're not already subscribed, remember to hit the subscribe button to get notified when new videos like this come up. I'll catch you guys sooner.